Welcome to Chaos2Cured podcast. You're here with Jeffrey Fried, author of Right Brain Children in a Left Brain World. It's a New York Times bestseller. Highly suggest picking it up. And Kirk Patrick Miller. I'm an author myself. My memoir you can pick up, which is Chaos2Cured, on Amazon, wherever you want to buy it. But we're going to talk today about holidays. We did this last year and we lost the show. So holidays are a time where we have massive amounts of stress and, dare I say it, expectations that are placed upon we place them on ourselves, but also from our family. This was a difficult time for me, which is why I want to talk about holidays, whether these are celebrations. It doesn't matter what holiday specifically it is, but this is something I struggled with. And I don't think I'm alone when you talk about neurodiverse children, people on the spectrum. So Jeffrey, do you just want to lead in with some thoughts on this?
Sure, absolutely. Holidays are hard for a lot of reasons for a lot of people. But again, the most important thing to factor in is the population of neurodiverse individuals that I work with, many of whom, if not most, are on the spectrum. It's 3 times worse. Why? Because all senses are 3 times stronger or something like that. So under stressful periods where you tend to have high expectations, the neurodiverse individual will have that, a lot of expectations, maybe some trepidation because there's going to be so much socialization. Thanksgiving and Christmas in particular are holidays where family gets together and everyone sort of expects to have a good time. So kind of the pressure's on. And these are folks, my people, my tribe, who really have trouble with lack of structure. For example, they can survive, a lot of us can survive during a typical week or a typical weekend, but you throw holidays in there with relatives, with planning, with cooking, high expectations, and then something goes wrong. A snowstorm comes, or you don't get along with a relative, or a friend that you want to desperately see isn't there. That throws us all into chaos, and not the Chaos2Cured chaos. It's a rough one. And I guess the cure would be lower your expectations, redouble, and this is a hard one, but you got to do it. Redouble your emphasis on eating well. Stay away from the sugar, which is rampant
Difficult.
that time of year. That really just makes it worse. Also, a lot of alcohol will do the same thing. And just relax, realize, pamper yourself, because there's every reason in the world to expect that there will be issues during this time. A big one's depression. People have such high expectations for Christmas and Thanksgiving. And I guess the thing is those high expectations can easily be dashed, and it can easily turn into depression. You might remember that your grandmother was there last year and not this year, and you miss her. And everybody feels that. I mean, but again, these neurodiverse, highly sensitive people feel more. Everything's more intense. I'll quote Temple Grandin again. People with autism are just like, or have all the senses that people who don't have autism have, just more of them. And that's like a mantra.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before on these podcasts, but I can't say it enough. One of the most insightful insights into, how people on the spectrum, or people who are just nearly on the spectrum, highly sensitive, neurodiverse, feel. So pamper yourself, like lower the expectations to something realistic. Make sure that you have away time if you're visiting with a lot of people. It's like find an excuse to be by yourself. Definitely, if you're the kind of person who likes pampering, get a haircut, a massage, a makeover, really take care of yourself and don't apologize for it. It's a tough period and you're going to need to get through it gracefully. So you really need to be nice to yourself. And of course, what we do, so many of us, is when things are awful, that's when we neglect our diet. That's when we neglect our meditation, our exercise, all bad. I'm not promising a bed of roses if you pamper yourself, but it won't be as bad.
I would agree. one thing that you brought up at the beginning, which is the change, the structure, that was killer for me. So oftentimes during the holiday season, you get right as soon as I got into a groove with school, there was Thanksgiving break, and then I get into a groove with school again, and then there's Christmas break or a holiday break, whatever you want to call it, and then so for me already with OCD, I like to have systematic plans. I like to follow, a specific schedule. It's nice if I can have that. So holidays were very difficult because there were unknowns. We have to go here. We have to go meet these people. I did not do really well with that. So for parents that are dealing with children that, are really hypersensitive on the spectrum, whether it's ADHD or something else, one thing that I felt really strongly was apprehension and anxiety. So every time we would have to go to a party, because my dad is definitely an extrovert. So I kind of want to tie this into what Jeffrey was saying, like pamper yourself. You have to know yourself. And Jeffrey, your advice on finding a quiet place, that is something I wish I would have known to even try. Because had I been able to communicate with my mom and dad properly, I would have said, listen, I can't handle this many people with this many lights and this much noise. I'm going to melt down. I need a place where I can let steam off. And what I would do is I would just push a fake smile all night long while we were at this, a party, and I'd be talking to one adult, and then I'd have to field questions from another person, then another person, and then there's like, holiday songs being sung, and it's overwhelming. And of course, what would happen at the end of the night on the drive home? I would have an absolute meltdown because there was no other time for me to let off any steam whatsoever. So I would explode. And my parents saw that as, bad behavior, or I'm hungry, or I'm tired. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't tired. I wasn't worn out even. I was emotionally worn out. I was emotionally drained. And it wasn't just the people. So it's not just being slightly more introverted. For me, it's just the excessive noise. And I use the word noise to cover everything from the feelings of the clothing to the cold temperatures. You go from hot to cold, you get into a cold car, then it's too hot and I'm sweating, and then the sweat sticks to my skin, which bothers me, and the clothing isn't right. And then you go from there, and then you go into another building and you're hit with sound and light. So it was really overwhelming. And you mentioned one other thing too, the expectations. I would watch, and I was very little, like 4 or 5. And I remember I'd watch, I think it was the Ghostbusters commercials. I'm trying to remember. They had figurines or something, but they were shooting their little light gun. And I really believed that's what it was going to do. Right. So even the toys, my expectations with toys were not realistic. So helping your child like look at the holiday and kind of, if they're expecting you to buy them a pony, it's kind of nice to explain, we can't afford a pony, and start that way ahead of time, right? If you
Right.
have to change plans, it would have been so nice. Now my family does this for me, and not all families and friends are this kind, but I'm very blessed. They will actually say, listen, in 2 weeks, we're looking at getting together with these people. We want you to kind of know as a heads up. And I'm like, oh, awesome. So, but they will tell me about it like, just a quick text reminder, like almost not every day, but it actually brings down my anxiety because it reminds me of something that's outside of my normal routine.
Yep.
So that was very helpful. And then of course, I know how to communicate now. So when I do need to get away and just step outside and take a deep breath, breathing is so important. So Jeffrey's advice on getting away is one of the best pieces that I can think of. And um, as far as some of the arguments you see happening with families, that is another thing that happens with holidays, where there's this heightened level of emotional stress. And that is so difficult to deal with, because especially when you're arguing or fighting, to keep your calm or to get away and get a breather is often difficult. So, and we all have to kind of play nice too.
Yep.
So a lot of times there's this added, I guess, sense of pressure to make everything perfect. And I
Very
think
good.
that feeling of, and to me, I already felt like I had to do that with everything all the time anyway.
Yeah,
So
this
this is more.
yeah. I want to say something too about that I just thought of that's very germane. Um, there's a lot of phony, I guess the word would be phony happiness. People who are putting on a smiling face because they feel it's expected. And these folks pick that up. I do, most of my clients do. Some other people that are very highly sensitive feel the same thing. It's exhausting to try to filter out which is real, which is phony. If a person comes up and they're sort of artificially happy and seem totally interested in you, you know that it's contrived, and you pick that up and you don't know what to react to. A lot of the folks on the spectrum actually pick up so much information from people and from the environment they don't know what to screen, if they can screen at all, and so they pick up all this phony happiness or contrived merriment, and they can't deal with it. And then you're having a conversation with one person. Maybe it's boring, maybe it's interesting. Somebody else just interjects, and you got to reset everything again because you're so sensitive, and it just takes you out of your processing realm. So it's brutal. And that's why it is so completely important to find a quiet spot and go there. Just disappear. Say you're going to the bathroom or something. And the other thing that struck me is I see my son doing this with his little boy when he starts to fuss. My son just says, "Put it into words, Jalen. Think of the right words." So if I were your father and you were having a hard time, what I would have said to you, Kirk, turn it into words. Tell me what's going on. I'll listen carefully. I won't blow you off, but I can't help if I don't know exactly what's going on. And maybe you would say, I'm getting a headache. All these people, all these lights, everybody's being artificially sweet, and I can't fake it as well as other people. And as a father, I would say, here, and find you a nice place to sit down for half an hour or 15 minutes or even 5. And I would tell you, you don't need to be phony. Keep it light and just get through it and try to find something interesting in what they're saying. It's an ordeal for highly sensitive people to have to go to these parties and act phony, act like you're happier than you are, because we're honest. And
Yep. Yep.
no place for honesty in this during the holidays. You can get you in real trouble.
Well, and it's, again, we go back to this word. I've said, expectations. I always have this discussion, um, and to me, the word has so many different meanings, and most of them are loaded. But when we look at holidays, we think of family, we think of getting together, and you see every show filled with smiles and presents and huge meals and alcohol and parties. And the reality is, it's not like that. I think of my niece, and it's the best example I can give, because one of the reasons she so badly wanted to go to try middle school was because she was watching shows like, high school or high school musical or whatever that is. She was watching shows that were movies, and she felt like that's reality. That's how school's going to be. That's how parties are going to be. And I don't think she's the only one that does that. I think a lot of us subconsciously look at all of those commercials and those perfect moments and those hallmark moments, and we go, ooh, that's what our life should be. And we frame everything based on that instead of being grateful for what we do have.
Yep.
That is something that was a huge source of my own pain in the past, because instead of being able to see what I did have, I was too well, again, trying to frame my life through everyone else's eyes. And the reality is, the eyes that we're taught to be framed, or the vision we're taught to be framed by, doesn't really exist. The key thing that is, and to me, and the main part about all of these holidays, and there is one theme that is true, and if you tie into that, everything gets better. And that's the idea of growing together, listening to each other, forgiving, and loving. those are all really positive, I would say positive mindset and growth mindset type views and ways to approach holidays. If you look at it as, and you know what, Steve Harvey saw this, and I don't know, I saw it on like a TikTok, and he said you just change one word in your vocabulary. You change the word have to get. Like I have to go to work, right? I think he did something along those lines, but I have to go to this party. You say I get to go see my grandmother, or I get to go spend time with this individual. Or heck, even if you don't want to go to the thing and you're with your family and you've already conversed with them, I get to have some quiet time, after about an hour or something. Whatever you decide on with your family. If you frame things based on the key parts, which are those warm, lovely things that do come with the holidays, it's helpful. I do think that there are a lot of people out there that are lonely and alone on the holidays, and that is not an easy thing to deal with, especially when you see all of the Netflix shows and again, what I just mentioned, that vision is what everybody sees. So I think no one should hold themselves up to those expectations or that belief that that's what you need to have. If you're grateful for what you have, you're already ahead of 90% of the people, in my opinion. That might be a little too high. Should be more optimistic. But for me, the holiday season, there's one other warning that I just want to give to parents, because there's the flip side, which is the end of the holiday season. So just as I became accustomed to all of those Christmas lights and seeing a tree and presents and the excitement of the idea of opening those presents, what happens? It vanishes. Everybody packs up the boxes and you just put it away for a year. That is traumatic for me. So, it's nice if you could kind of let people, kind of adjust down a little bit. And Jeffrey, I know you and I talked about this last year when we lost that show, and you said it really eloquently at the time. But you'd stated something along the lines of let people kind of come down, so you don't have to take down all the decorations right away. You can kind of take down a few of them and just make the transition process easier. You said it so beautifully. Would you still agree with that?
Yeah, transitions are hard. So if you can, make them gradual, and also make sure that you are warned that they're coming. It's not changes as much as a good one. It's not changed as much as it is unpredicted change, sudden change, rapid change. It just throws off somebody who's finally figured out the paradigm of how to act, and you just throw it out the window. And it's frustrating. It's never articulated, at least not in books that I've read or speaking to people. But it's almost like, this is a little irrelevant, but I'm going to end after this. It's almost like people like us can hear everything. We have incredible hearing, and it's not the hearing as much as the unpredictability of the noise that kills us, like jackhammers going off and on, people screaming and then talking lately. We just sit around and wait for the next interruption. That's what's so hard on us. So, as a concluding statement, be gentle with yourself and try to make the changes gradual, and be open. Listen to your kid or your spouse or whatever, and tell them to put it into words and give them time to think of the right words, and you'll survive it and maybe even enjoy it.
I love that. I would definitely say, if you're not familiar with breathing techniques, look a few up. You can download the Calm app. There's some other apps out there that are free as well, but just find some ways to help yourself learn how to take a breather and a breath and be prepared. For me, I kind of have to get ready for it. I'm like, okay, next month is going to be November. Or this month is Halloween. So even before Halloween, I was like, oh. So I just kind of prepare for the change in schedules, because everything's going to, especially in my particular line of work, everybody kind of goes off on vacations on some of this stuff too. So there's a lot that changes. If I'm aware of it and I know about myself, I can control a lot more of my world. So keep learning about yourself. Jeffrey, I loved your tips and suggestions in this one. I don't think there's much more I want to get into on this. We'll just keep it short and sweet. But the rapid change, I do want to do a follow-up show on that. And we did talk about loneliness. So if anybody heard this and is feeling a little lonely, we did a show on that earlier on. So feel free to view some of our shows. The ones in season 2 are better. And please keep giving us some suggestions. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate you all listening. Have a phenomenal day. And thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for listening to Chaos2Cured podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with everyone you know. And definitely like, follow, and subscribe. Certainly leave a comment if you'd like. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about the next time. Also, in our show notes, there should be direct links where you can follow us on our social media, as well as reach out to us directly. Thanks again, and have a great day. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on Chaos2Cured podcast are the speaker's own. All discussion is based on our own experiences. We do not and cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information. Chaos2Cured podcast cannot give medical or health advice. All discussion is based upon our personal experiences and meant for general and educational purposes. This podcast is not a substitute for professional help or for diagnostic purposes for yourself or another. Chaos2Cured podcast always encourages you to consult an appropriate professional.